Scenes here from Paterson, speaking to Hunter Cardinal about Bet, which is streaming now worldwide on Netflix. Good to see you, man. Welcome to the show.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me. What a day, hey?
What a day. Release day. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's been a wild ride. I had one of those sleeps. I don't know if you've had this where you're like, oh, something big and important's happening, and then you have a dream that you're laying in bed like I can't sleep. And then you're like, did I sleep or was that a dream? Anyways, so who knows? Who knows?
Absolutely. So I remember when this was announced, right? Like the Bet was announced, then you were announced joining the cast, and now people are able to see it. And we knew that it was based on a manga. And anytime you work on something that existed before, there is that kind of like ping pong match, I guess, right? If you're going to like use it as research, if you're going to throw it away, well, not throw it away, but not look at it as much because it is live adaptation on Netflix. It's not the manga. What was your relationship with the manga specifically with this?
You know, it wasn't very, long before at all. Like I discovered the manga once that it was told to me what the show was based on. You know, you do your research as much as you can, but ultimately what you have to do to honor source material, I feel like, is not flatten it through mimicry.
For
You know,
sure.
not try to just recopy it, try to make it authentic, try to make it meaningful to who we are as a cast, the questions that we're interested in exploring, and really just hope that when people are about to watch it, that they're not going into it expecting it to be, an orange and it's really an apple. Because it
Yeah.
could be an incredible apple, but if you take a bite out of an apple and it's not an orange, you're gonna be jarred.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And to kind of add to that, it's a good kind of segue. When you have a show like this that has so many elements at play, right? It has the kind of gaming, kind of betting component. It's got the coming of age. It's a boarding school, all these different characters, ensemble cast. You have all these elements in the scripts that you eventually get, right? And then you see it come to life on screen when you go to production. What is that script to screen life journey like for you, given all the elements in a show like this?
It's this wild sort of wager and gamble in and of itself.
Yeah.
And I was kind of thinking about this. I'm like, it was so ironic that this show was called Bet because then I started seeing all the things that, we are as sure as we can be, and then we're kind of leaving certain things up to chance. But
Yeah.
I feel like Simon and our casting director, Larissa Mayer, as well as the whole team, really centered this idea of trust and alignment. They really trusted in the people that they were building around this story in terms of the cast, the creatives and whatnot. And I feel like it really paid off. And,
Mhm.
I'm really excited for audiences to dive into that.
I know the answer to this question is usually you try not to because as an actor you want to be present in the moment, do your scenes, you know what I mean, do your job, and then then it's out of your hands and then it's in the world's hands on Netflix, which is nuts. But it's like there's a lot of like moments as an audience member where I'm kind of sweating a little bit with this game that's going on, right? This long kind of survival game with all these students. Are you ever conscious of the audience member watching Bet while you're making it at all, or does that happen a little bit after you wrap, so to speak?
I feel like when you're locked in, you and the audience member, it's like you're sitting right beside each other, where
Yeah.
you're just like, oh my God, I am because you are. Like, it just makes sense. Like, there's so many scenes that were wild to film that were either hilarious or like deeply tragic. And, when you're in it, you're kind of observing it. And then, you're done afterwards. And honestly, I felt like every scene that we were doing when we were locked in, it was like a mini theater performance. It was cathartic, it was electric, it was incredible, but also just exhausting.
When you kind of establish your character's arc and everything you have to kind of do for your character with your scenes, whether it's with Miku or Io or anyone else, when do you then start thinking about the overall kind of arc and storyline of Bet? Whether it has to do with your character or not, because those are two separate things, right? Like your stuff and then the overall kind of story and how everything's going to progress, right?
Yeah, you know what? It's so wild where again, that's where the trust comes in, where you're trusting that each scene that you're doing, if you're locked in, you are taking a step on that larger journey. There's so many times like me, I'm like quite an analytical person, so I have like all these theories and whatnot of what the scene should be, da da da. You can't know that when you're
No.
in the scene. And in fact, I feel like sometimes it can sort of lessen your presence and lessen the resonance and the warmth behind what it is that you're doing. So I feel like it's this really interesting, almost like a Zen practice or something, a
Yeah.
mindfulness. You're trying
Yeah.
to be like, okay, I'm a little bit out of the scene now. I'm going to lock back in. But that's what you get when you're trying to do something that you care about ultimately at the end of the
Totally.
day.
Absolutely. It's so well said. And it's interesting, right? Because my filmmaker, like, when I started making films, I started thinking about these things because I remember, like, I wonder, Hunter, what it would be like going back to like 10 years ago when I watched certain movies and films, what I would think about those films if I made films. You know what I mean? Because I watch movies so differently now. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I bet you have the perspective too of how like some films aren't made, they're born. And it's
Yes.
like
I
they have
love that you said that. Yeah.
they have their own life, and it's this weird thing where like for me I think when I was like talking with a mentor and I learned and kind of was thinking about stories as more being animate, it totally changed how I position myself in storytelling. It's
Mhm.
more about being of service rather than being on stage and being looked at, and that is such a wild thing because it's more fascinating to watch someone do something and
Yeah.
experience something and be rather than sort of present and mimic again.
Absolutely. And, because like there's some scenes we see in Bet, right? Especially that first scene where we meet your character for the first time in episode 1 with Miku, right? And like giving them the warning about the game and everyone. That's like a 3-4 minute scene from the viewer perspective, runtime wise. But there's a chance that those scenes took like 2-3 days to film sometimes. You know what I mean? So when that happens, do they feel like their own mini movie, those big scenes, or do they feel like part of the project? It's interesting, right?
I feel like when you're working with a crew and a team that knows how precious it is to be doing what it is that they're doing, because we filmed that like when the film and television industry was like kind of going through it,
Yeah.
it creates this electric feeling where you know that the people who are there want to be there
Yep.
and they want to do the best that they can. So it does feel like time moves slower. And it feels almost like this really vivid, lucid dream that was just delicious and honestly quite addictive.
Absolutely. All right, it's time to talk about the thing I'm so excited to talk to you about in this interview. You know
Yeah.
exactly what we're going to talk about. I'm so
Mhm.
pumped about this because we did like kind of a little pre-interview. We're like, whoa, save it for the interview. Um, it's always cool when there's surprises in shows. It's always cool when there's little cameos, right? And you know what? There is a cameo in episode 8, which is like one of the greatest things ever. Oh, first of all, spoiler alert. This will be out in a couple of days, but spoiler alert for the people who have not watched it yet. Description, I warned you, okay? I'm sorry for getting into this right now. Seth freaking Rollins from the WWE is in bed, and you have a scene with him, and it is amazing. And I just kind of want to know everything. Like the stage is yours. Like, when did you find out he was going to be in it? When did you find out you were going to have a scene with him? What was the scene like? Spill, like everything. I want to know everything.
Well, like we were reading the scripts and we're just like, who's gonna be in the beaver suit? Like, comes up a lot. And then I remember when we got to episode 8 and like I got to my scene and I was like, oh, this is happening. And then I saw his name and I was like, oh my God. I felt like my dad and my grandpa on my dad's side were so stoked. I could just feel them buzzing with excitement because it's wild. He's a huge deal. And also, I was excited too because I love doing like fight and stunt stuff. Like it's always been something I've wanted to do. So I'm like, yeah, to get my butt kicked by him first, project. Like what more could you ask for, really?
Were there any conversations with him? Like, what was it like? What was it like?
So he is so cool. When we were filming that scene, it was like one day, and like we had, prepped this sort of sequence with Allison Reed, and she was so incredible. And we had a lot of stunt performers. I had a stunt double named Liam, and he was like incredible. And we worked out, okay, what is this sequence? And I've always been interested in like fight, not just because it's just super fun, but because like in Naruto, you can see how characters develop over
Yeah.
time. You can see, the choices that they make. I always love that as details. And I remember just being like, hey, like I'm excited for the stunt stuff. Let me know when things are happening. And Allison was like, well, we're gonna do a little rehearsal. Like, do you want to be involved in that? And I was like, heck yeah. And then so I was in there, wanting to do as many stunts as I could. And so we had sort of this pre-planned idea that we recorded, we sent to Seth, and then he shows up as the professional he is, slips into the beaver suit, and then we have a quick walkthrough of things, and he's asking like my comfort level about certain things like getting kicked to the chest or like head stomped. And like I learned how to do all of those things. He was such a pro, and it was so fun. I have like more things that I want to say, but if you have a follow-up question, please ask, or I can keep diving into this.
What?
Okay,
Oh my God, I'm so excited. No. Okay. So like what, okay, when you like when you get the sequence, like, because it was the stunt, like, what, like, that was the rehearsal, right? But like there was the stunt man that gets curb stomped. That's not you, right? That's the stunt man.
That was me. Yeah, I got kicked to the chest. I got head stomped. I got tossed around. I had Liam help with being the one who gets flipped, because that's just scary. And I was like,
I guess when you wrapped it, what was that conversation like? That's my follow-up question. Like when you were done with that.
Oh my God, it was great. Like, I think like what's wild, like the most important thing that I wanted to talk about was how gentle Seth was. Like, he was like, we're gonna do a kick to the chest, and like this is how it's gonna work. And I was like, okay, I've done contact improv theater school. I've done like, fight stuff. I did like a little bit of boxing before I started this role.
Yeah.
I was like, let's see it. Like, I'm getting ready to be kicked to the chest. It was so gentle. It was so light. It felt like someone like gently pushing you, a little kiss, a little tap, and then you just go flying because that makes sense with the momentum. And I was like blown away. It was so fun. It didn't hurt at all. I remember hitting the floor, and again, we have a great team that, made sure that things weren't like super hard concrete or anything. I remember like kind of lying there, and then they were all just like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, well, of course, like I'm fine. But it looked so realistic that everyone was like certain that I was lying and that it actually was really bad, but
Yeah.
I was too scared to say that it wasn't. But it was like, it was amazing.
The
Like
elbow to the head. When he's like,
elbow
Seth
to the
freaking
head.
Rollins, bitch. He elbows you in the head.
Getting the head stomped, like that was the most fun that I think I had on set, because it was like such an interesting like way, and it's quite intuitive. I don't condone that as a a thing to do, but if you do it with a professional like Seth freaking Rollins, that's the best way to do it,
Theme
and it's so
song, it
fun.
was like the best thing ever. Like when I watched that episode, I was like, I had no idea. I was like, this is the best thing ever. You know what I mean?
I feel like I leveled up in my life, and I thought that, I'd have to, fight people and win to get cred. I never thought that me getting my like butt kicked so badly would actually increase my standing. I remember Simon being so stoked, or like, our executives on the show, like kind of gathering around me like kids, being like, what was it like? How cool is he? Isn't he so cool? And I was like, yeah, he's freaking amazing.
Seth freaking Rollins.
Yeah, and one of the things too that I try to do if I ever meet people who are really rad, so this might explain some things for those folks listening. I like to just have conversations with them that that I think are interesting. And so I remember we were like lying in between set takes of right after I get elbowed to the face. And I for some reason thought it would be important for me to know his thoughts on Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And we had a great conversation, kind of lying there, very romantic, talking about cryptids, and it was a really great moment. So just all around an incredible human, so professional, and also just like it was so hard for me to keep that secret from like basically for a year until now. So I'm just like so stoked that I get to just live my truth.
And all 10 episodes, because there's a lot of like Seth freaking Rollins being in it is amazing, but there's also a lot of other amazing things in Bet, which is streaming out worldwide on Netflix. All 10 episodes, they can check it out. Hunter, so great chatting with you, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you. This is great. And yeah, I hope folks enjoy it. And thank you so much for making the time in the space.
Hunter Cardinal on Instagram, right?
One more Cardinal. There's so many.
More Cardinal. Yeah. Absolutely. So
Yeah.
you can check that out. Well, this has been Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative for previous episodes. Until next time, this is Hunter and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.